At this time, I'll turn it over to Dr. Ross for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of our board and our community. It is so exciting to see so much innovation when you think about not only the performance at the our science fair, the regional science fair, our teachers, but excuse me. Also, thank you to all of the sponsors. Without their sponsorships of these projects, a lot of this couldn't be done. So again, this is a community effort. We really appreciate all of the hard work. And I just look forward to see all of that as innovation, things that were not here, problems that are being solved, and our students are at the forefront of innovation for the future. So really excited about it. And that brings us to what we do. We're a system guided by 3 critical questions. Why do we do this work? How do we accomplish that why? And then what are our outcomes? Our why is that we love and grow our students. Our how is that we're focused on academic, social, emotional growth and development. And our strategic plan outcomes, these are 24 strategies that are chasing 4 performance goals, all to the day where we will see every child feeling loved in our schools and having demonstrated academic growth in our schools. As always, our feedback from the community is important. We receive our state assessments, and we're tracking each and every measure towards the state goal where 75% of students will be at or above grade level by 2030. We have completed our fall assessment, our winter assessment, and we're currently in our spring assessment. So once that data is compiled, we'll get that to the board and community, and that will be our last assessment until we have the formative assessment, the summative assessment, which will be SC ready. Right now, we're also tracking a huge part of our report card, but also our progress to our students, and that is our graduation rate. Our high schools and district office support are working diligently to ensure that every student, 9 out of 10 of them, are able to graduate within 4 years of entering high school. The document or main item that we make sure that we get this work done, our vision, mission, and outcome, is through our general fund budget. And so it's important that we understand that the general budget is a vision for to ensure that we can execute the priorities of the district. We look at our general operating fund that takes care of our salaries, our utilities and services, supplies and materials, and equipment. And you can see that 64% of what we receive comes from the state, 35% from local. There was a time prior to Act 388 where almost 50% of the funds that we received came from local, almost 49%. Since Act 88, that is now 35%. So it's important for us to understand that our revenue minus our expenses is what our reserve is, or our fund balance. As we will work to put this together, we appreciate your feedback. We're getting feedback from other stakeholders, and we're going to pull that all together in our meeting in April. In April, we'll have a budget discussion. It is our goal to give you feedback on how we've put together all of these priorities within the structure of our budget. We want to hear feedback from you as we go to work on the first reading. And so this is important to look at our strategic plan amendments today, see how we're working those in so that all of the actions that we're taking are aligning towards the goal of putting together a program that addresses the profile of the South Carolina graduate. So all of this is important that we stay on this timeline, and I thank the board for moving along in the budget discussion as we have laid out. So that brings us to a huge issue that we're dealing with now, and that's the planning for rezoning. We are in the process of the operational change of moving from our current elementary zones to our new referendum zones. There's a lot that goes into the planning of this, and it is good that we're taking next year to make sure that we get this right. Moving from this structure to a new structure takes a lot of planning and a lot of coordination. And so to kind of give an overview of how we move from this structure to our new structure, I've asked our Chief of Human Resources, Dr. Tamara Turner, to come forth and just give a highlight of, to ensure that we're not putting the cart before the horse, how we will go through the rezoning process as it deals with staff. So, Dr.
Good
Turner.
evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Ross. One of the things you'll notice about the process for staffing for 26-27 is it takes the collaboration of multiple departments. So while I stand here tonight on behalf of the Office of Human Resources, I hope what you'll notice on the next slide is our effort to make this manageable. We've broken it up into several parts that we're addressing piece by piece, including conversations around structure, programs, staffing, equipment, and occupancy. And the reason for this process is that it allows multiple departments to come together and bring each of our perspectives to each one of those important building blocks for the rezoning process. Up to this point, we've had a meeting on March 11th where directors from every department met, and we simply focused on structure. And in looking at that structure, it was important that we took the time for everyone to understand what are going to be the structural changes as it relates to grades. I know many of us are familiar with the overview of the flow chart, but we wanted to slow down so that they understood what does that mean for grades and how does that impact each school. What you'll notice as a part of this conversation, what you see in white are the grades that currently exist at each of those schools. What you see in red are the grades that will be added or moved to the other schools. One of the reasons that this is significant is Dr. Ross will go into our timeline where we are collaborating with teachers. What we owe them is some explanation of where these opportunities will be by grade level. And our conversation one that focused simply on structure allowed us an opportunity internally to make sure that we all understood that. From this, the conversation will advance to the next part, which is programs. And with that, Dr. Ross, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Turner, and I appreciate you putting this together because as you look at the red boxes for each one of those schools, that represents staff that has to move along with the programs that need to move. And I think what we gain is a better middle school program within School District 5. All of our middle schools having 3 years embedded in them. But moving that staff does take a lot of time and preparation. So as a result, I want the staff to understand that on May 10th, after the contracts are due, that they will receive a survey. And that survey is allowing them to provide their preferences. So as we move those grades there, we want them to tell us where they prefer to be moved within that structure. And so we're going to go over this over and over and over so that everyone understands that this is to provide their preference. And how does that look? We're now in ending March. The directors are meeting to outline the programs. We'll do that for March and April, and in May that survey will go out. It goes out after May 10th. We use this summer to put a preliminary assignment for everyone, and then in November, the principals will get those preliminary numbers. We'll finalize it in December. In January of next school year, everyone will receive their assignments. Those assignments will line up with the transfer window, so you almost have 2 bites of the apple. If your preferences are not provided for, you change your preference from May to January, you have another opportunity in January to ask for a transfer. Our principals have agreed that by March 2026, all staff will have their orientations, and then by May of 2026, all students and families will have their orientations at the new school. As a result of that, we'll be ready for the following year, the 26-27 school year, for our rezoning. So we're excited about that work. But once we move, we still have to do the business of educating our children, and that requires classroom supports. One of the best things that we can do supporting the classroom is to allow an environment where teachers work with each other to share great strategies that work for the diverse needs that we have in our district. We call these professional learning communities, where they're asking 4 critical questions. What do we want our students to know and be able to do? How do we know when they've learned it? How will we respond if they do not learn it? And then how do we extend the learning for the students who are already proficient? It is our expectation that all teachers can communicate these I can statements to not only the students but their parents. We want parents to be empowered with this information so we can know what the next steps are. And understand this works for every student on the continuum, for our struggling learners and for our gifted and talented advanced learners. Every student on the continuum, this works for. And so we are looking to help our teachers as we move to this kind of individualized approach by acknowledging what their experiences, giving them time to reflect on practice, and then giving them supports. One of the supports that we've talked about, I want to share with the board again, and that is generative AI, or artificial intelligence. And looking at some of the things that this program can do is really exciting. This list is very limited in the full impacts of some of the generative AI that we have. But in order to do this, really it's going to be about giving the faculty the faculty. We heard from Mary Kennerly earlier today about the work that she's doing with the foundation. And she was the one that brought to me that the history of the faculty having a faculty really starts back in 1964, 1979 in our district, where we had instructional assistants. These were people who worked with the teachers to help those students who were behind or ahead to make sure that they received the individual feedback and assignments based on their performance. Well, we don't have that model in place, but what we do have is a tool that can help us with that today. We see that AI is growing. I did not know my children are using it, and if you look at how fast it's growing, it took Netflix 3.5 years to get to 1 million users. It took generative AI like ChatGPT 5 days. So the goal is to give them a healthy space to learn how to use this the right way so that the learning is never interfered with. I think it's important for those who are new to AI. In my generation, we grew up with the movie The Terminator, and so sometimes you think about that when it comes to AI. But this is a tool. This is a tool for teachers. Our District Teacher of the Year, Alyssa Power, says, "I do the thinking, it does the work." And so I am excited that our Chief of Academics led a team to go visit a district that was already working in this area, Horry County. And I would like for Ms. McCaskill to share some of the examples and things that she's learned from how other districts are using generative AI like Magic Schools. Ms. McCaskill.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Board, Dr. Ross. We did learn some pretty incredible types of things with AI and just allowed us to brainstorm with a district that had already gone through some of the processes that we were in the process of doing ourselves. And last board meeting, you asked for some examples of things that this could produce. And so these first couple of slides is an example from a 4th grade classroom in our district that the teacher took the SC Ready prompt and SC Ready-ish, let me say that, it was not from SC Ready, but the SC Ready-ish prompt, and put it into the AI program. And then took a story that was written, it was called The Snowy Surprise, so put that story in, and then put the child's response to this. So, in other words, this was a response to a text. And so you have to put in the text itself you put in the prompt, and then you put in the child's response as well. And this is what comes from that. It tells the teacher that on the SC Ready rubric, the child would make a 3, which would be meeting expectations. It goes through and tells them specific areas of strength that the child has, specific areas for growth based directly on that child's writing. And then it talks about the mechanics of writing. And this is something that the teacher then can read. Of course, they have to analyze it themselves to make sure that it actually is correct. But then they can sit with the child and go through this and explain specifically what that child needs to do to make their writing better. And so instead of the teacher spending 30, 45 minutes sometimes on a writing assignment, this is something that takes some of that off of the plate of teachers, not all of it, because the teacher still has to use their knowledge of writing to be able to make sure that this is correct feedback, but it certainly gives them an avenue that gets them started without having to be completely on their own for it. So that's one example for writing. Then I decided to just make my own example of something that we've heard a lot about multilingual learners. And just a new student walking into my classroom. I just thought about, what if a new student walked in the classroom and they spoke a different language? Another powerful thing that this slide shows is, can you imagine if you walked into the classroom and the first thing that you see is that first line, "Hello, my name is Tina, how are you?" And it's written just like that in English. But you're a student who speaks Dari from Afghanistan, and that's what you're used to seeing. And that's, but then you're a child from Spain or speaks Spanish, and that's what you're used to seeing, or a child from Vietnam, and that's what you're used to seeing. And just to think of what that feeling could be, but it took me about 30 seconds to create what's there in front of you by typing that in and just putting in Dari, and then I hit edit and put Spanish, and then hit edit and then put Vietnamese. And it literally took about 30 seconds to get that. And how I could make a child feel comfortable in my classroom by being able to go in and simply type something and be able to show it to them and say, "Welcome to our classroom, we're glad you're here," in a language that they could speak. So just really thought that was a powerful example to look at. We did speak with Horry County this week. We had a virtual visit with them, and this was one slide that sort of stood out to me a lot. They gave us lots of resources for us to use, but this was a slide that stood out to me because it really took all of their thoughts and where they were going with AI. It's centered around professional development. It was thoughtful and strategic use of AI. It's not just the use of AI, but it's thoughtful and intentional use of it. And then the continuous improvement in teacher feedback. And that's where I think that is something that can constantly provide help and assistance for our teachers and give them some time back, which is what we're really searching for here. Some key takeaways: the position statement. Most of the districts that we have looked at, we've talked with Greenville County, we've talked with Horry County, we've talked with others right here in the Midlands. All of the districts that we've spoken to are not changing policy for AI, because if we write policy today, tomorrow it's going to be different. And so we're not writing policy around AI, but they are writing a position statement around AI. And that is something that we are working on. And hopefully by the May 7th board meeting, we'll have something to share with you for that. Also, some guidelines for teachers and students. We generally have that, but this is a little more specific to help really with that intentional teaching of AI and the use of it, that those guidelines will help, but also a parent guide for what parents can expect AI to help with, and how they can embrace it versus being afraid of it. So that's something that we're working on as well, and hope to have those 3 things for you on the May 7th board meeting. Consistent language. Because AI has been out for some time and we have not, we've done some PD around it, but we haven't focused around, say, one particular program or one particular platform, really developing some consistent language around the platform that we choose. and being able to ensure that everyone is on the same page with that. Want to make sure that we have differentiated professional development, because just like I can tell you that I've had to make myself say that's okay because I didn't grow up with it. It's something new for me. Our kids it's like second nature to them. Our young teachers, it's like second nature to them. So we want to make sure that our professional development reaches our teachers at the level of, I'm a little afraid, to, hey, I got this. What else can I do? And so we want to make sure that that is really flowing the gamut for our teachers. And this really is a tool that takes things off of the teacher's plate. Constantly, I can know just from 34 years of education, hearing, there's one more thing on the plate. How tall can the plates get? They keep stacking. It's about to boil over, and I've heard that all the time. But this is something that can truly begin to pull a string here and pull a string there. Doesn't take the thinking away, and it doesn't replace the teacher by any means, but it certainly begins to pull these little pieces away to make their job as the professional of doing the work of teaching, that they can truly do that work. And this is just from a teacher from Dutch Fork High School. Susan Applin is our specialist for instructional technology, and she teaches a class with UDL, the Universal Design of Learning, and they are doing quite a bit with AI. And this was a quote from the teacher, and it just stood out to me. It says, AI allows me to be more productive and more creative. AI doesn't create lessons for me, but it does give me feedback on my ideas. Sometimes AI can give me new ideas that I can take and modify for it to make sense for my students. In addition, it can help me make instructional materials that otherwise would take me a long time to do. For example, if I need to scaffold for students such as sentence starters, I can use AI to produce this in no time. It is a tool such as a smartboard or a textbook. AI can't replace teachers, but it can make them feel empowered by having more time to be creative. So, Dr. Ross, I stand for any questions that you might have.
I'm sorry.
You knew it was coming, didn't you? I think this is awesome. I think just providing another resource for teachers, like you say, to give them, even if it's just a hook for their class. I was just curious, do the teachers have to enter like a profile of their students? I mean, I know they've got so many varying learning styles and all that, but is that a consideration when she's, looking for something to help come up with a lesson plan? I was just curious because you know how classrooms are. You get, and Dr. Ross has shared with us, with some of our classes where the spectrum is just so wide.
So the more intentional your prompt is, the better the product that you get out. So of course, we do not input any specific names of students at all. So therefore, there's no identifiable information that would go into AI. Now, what I can do is I could put in a prompt that would say, I need a 10-minute remediation lesson for a third grader who's reading on a first grade level, and I want it to be around this standard. And you could input your third grade standard, copy, paste, and actually there's a bot. I learned all about bots recently too that we can create so that the standards are already there, but that's way too much for tonight for me to go into. But you put the standard in and it then comes out with exactly what you just asked for. So yes, you do put in some specifics, but never a student's name, so it's never identifiable information.
Right. Well, I was just curious as far as just learning abilities, or if you have a special ed class, or a special ed student coming in, for mainstreaming or something like that.
I'll tell you the one thing that stood out to me, Horry County, we were talking about the enterprise version, which is the paid version, and you can create these customized bots within it, and they had created one for rigor. And so, we had talked a lot about the remediation of things and being able to remediate. But this was a bot where a CP teacher could take a CP lesson and drop it into this bot, and it automatically raises the rigor of that lesson to be an honors level lesson. And so that, whenever they showed that to me, I was like, oh my goodness, like, when can we get into this? Because it was just amazing. Because, that's hard. It's hard to have the CP and the honors and then to know exactly how to differentiate that. But this really was a tool that helped with that, and I think it could be a big benefit for teachers.
Yeah, that's sort of what came to mind with me too, was your honors kids it's like an AP class. They come in with bated breath to learn whatever you're going to put forth. But maybe the CP kids, that would be a real assistance to the teacher trying to help pull up those kids. So I think that's great. This one's.
Well, sorry, just keep it. Okay. I am all for trying to get any possible, help within our classrooms, but I have a bit of a different opinion, and it's not that I'm afraid of it. I just see this as a really, really slippery slope. I don't know how many of my fellow board members have used any of the AI systems that have been out recently, but I mean, these things are learning at a rate that we humans cannot keep up with. And I guess my questions are like, specifically for having the teachers use them. If we allow teachers, what's put in place to prevent our students from it? I mean, if we have a teacher writing a lesson, what's put in place to prevent our students from using the same system to write an essay or a response? Because they can, like you say, you can put this in and it'll write a thesis, essentially, and they're learning every day. And so, with the whole conversation of cell phones and technology in classrooms, it just makes me pause to how far this could go. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does, and it actually gives me a great opportunity to talk a little bit about Magic School. Magic School AI is the platform that we are pursuing for our teachers to use and students to use. And the purpose behind that is that it's very much geared for education purposes. And so the student side of Magic School AI, students only have access to the tools that the teacher assigns to the student. So I make an assignment. The teacher gives the tool to the students to be able to use with that assignment. But it's also geared that even if you go into the kind of customized part with the student, where there's a Raina is the bot that you use if you're going in just as an adult. That's the name of the bot, but the students have a different one. But if you go into that and you drop something in, let's just say I dropped it in and said, please write an essay on the impacts of the Civil War. It's going to come back to you and say, I'm sorry, but I can't do that. I can brainstorm with you and give you some suggestions, but I cannot write this for you. So it's designed to be a brainstormer and not a to-do for you.
I got you. And that's the one platform. And I guess another question that brings up, I saw a video the other day. It was in like a college class, and I'm not sure if it's the bot. I don't know the terms on these things, but it was a video that somebody was taking from behind another student, and as they're taking their exam, the student is on their computer, and you can just see that it's going through and it's analyzing the exam, and it's immediately popping up the answer, and then she's just clicking on the answer, boom, the next question, boom, and goes through the test. And so if we're using Magic Box or these types of things, I mean, what's to prevent them from just pulling up ChatGPT or X's Grok or any of the other platforms that are out there? This one might keep them from doing it, but some of the other ones won't.
I'm going to use an article that I just read today. It talks about AI literacy. And I think if we think about in terms of years ago, it used to be that Google was the tool, right? And we were worried about using Google and worried about what Google was going to give to us. Well, whenever we talk about AI literacy, AI is truly something that, if you look at the definition of it, it talks about collaborating and communicating. And in order to be able to use AI literally, like with literacy base, we've got to teach students how to do that. So the article that I was reading, 65% of the jobs today expect kids to come in and use AI with integrity. And so we either teach the students here how to use it with integrity, or we're not really going to be preparing them for that job. And so when I read that today, I thought, wow, I actually took some screenshots of some pieces and parts of it, because personally, I understand where you're going, because I wondered that myself, but I also think, just like Google, I've got to make sure that our students know how to use this with integrity. There's always going to be a way that there's a copyright issue somewhere that we need to teach to that. But if we don't teach to it, that's when they're going to use it incorrectly.
And thank you for using that. This part of the quote from the teacher, respect, I mean, I see what she's saying, but it's learning. It's continuing to learn. They're teaching them how to think, essentially, which is a crazy concept to me. But you can see where the pause is in like a smartboard or a textbook. It's there, and it stays there, and it does, I mean, it gets updated over time, but it's not constantly relearning itself. And so I just think that before we implement it completely, we definitely need to just think ahead a little bit. But thank you.
I agree with you.
I want to say, and I appreciate that, because you're speaking what a lot of people are thinking. And as I heard AI, again, I go back to my conceptualization of it, right? But I would go back to that notion, it's the tool, not the terminator. I think one of the things that we have to do, and we'll present to this board, are the standards that they look at right now. Even though our tests are A, B, C, D, or all of the above, we're kind of used to circling in those. That's not where the standards are. The standards are analyzation, evaluation, creation. And I think sometimes our kids struggle with, what is the right answer? Just tell me what it is. I remember watching that same YouTube thing. I'm like, they have this, and they have glasses now, and I don't want to tell all our kids the secrets, but that give the answer. And I think if you look at those who are designing tests and not designing assessments, and you see schools moving away from SAT, they're moving more towards how well is your child able to critically think? It's more towards what those students we recognized earlier are doing, creating answers that are not Googleable. And so one of the things that I like about it is that they can get answers from anywhere, but they're not taught to think everywhere. Whereas instead of I put in what I want to divide this fraction by this fraction, it doesn't give you the answer. What it does help you do is walk through it. What we're really excited about is giving parents this information to work with their children. You know, how many times you come home and say, what did you do today? And they can't necessarily articulate what they were supposed to learn, but they ask you for help with the homework, or they say, I have this project due. I was able to take a standard that I did not understand and break it down to a first grade level where I can understand it, and then help my children through it. So I think too, it's our parents said very clearly that whatever you do, make sure what you're doing is for my child. And I think we finally have a tool where I can get 17,000 lessons catered to your child's needs, and put that in the hands of the parents and the teachers. And I think when we get that and you look at what those standards are asking us, evaluate, to produce, to create, to synthesize, to do all of those things that are kind of higher level things, I think we have a chance now for teachers, as they said, to be able to give you as a parent more feedback. I think we always have the problems of misuse of technology, and I agree with that. One of our teachers said there should be a moment where we put everything down and we go back, you know, a detox moment where for this day during the week, we're handwriting, and I agree with that. We're going to the encyclopedia. We're doing those things. I think we must always keep those modalities. But I think as we move towards individual learning, having something that I can put to the parents and the teachers and the students' hands that give you that individualized approach and feedback, but not the answers, is what's unique. So we do move with that pause. I want to, and I'll say this and I'll be quiet, what we bring back to you as we've shared in this presentation is going to be our philosophy on our position, our guidelines for students and teachers, our parent guide so that parents know how to use it, and our consistent language. So we owe that to you at our May meeting. so that we can address some of those concerns.
Any more questions? Oh, Mr. Scully?
Yeah, again, just addressing the issue of risk with students, that risk is present today with students because of ChatGPT and other Llama and other AI generators, whether we adopt and give the teachers this tool or not. So it's still, that is something we've got to deal with regardless today. And really, that's always been the case. AI, back when I was a student, was getting a textbook at the beginning of the year, opening it up and seeing the person who had it last year wrote the answers in the back. That was my AI. And I would love to sit here and say that I erased them, and no, I struck gold whenever that happened. So, so the effort that's an issue that we've always had to deal with, and something that we'll have to, whether we adopt Magic School for teachers and give them that tool. But I think your point about teaching them in integrity, using it as a platform for that's brilliant. And so I appreciate you saying that, and that's a very good lesson for us. So every teacher that I've talked to about this program has just given glowing feedback over it and is so excited and really pulling for us to get this tool for them. So thank you for tracking that down.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. McCaskill.
Thank you, Ms. McCaskill. So as we work to get this in, we will ask for a budget request in the upcoming budget, but we do have some room in this budget to go ahead and get started once we get the position statements. So now I have our Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Heather Tucker, to bring our January financials.
Hi, good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Ross. I have for you our January financials. For the period ending January 31st, 2025, our revenue summary, we are right on track with where we were last year at approximately 68% through the year with our revenue. We expect this through January. We are a little under 60% through the year, but we see our largest revenues come in from our local sources, our tax sources, in December and January. Just to give you an idea of the cash flow, December we collected $11.2 million in total tax collections. For January, it was a little over $30 million, and as of February, we're back down to $1 million. So just to illustrate that cash flow from our local sources. Our state sources of revenue, our state aid to classroom, that is broken up over 12 months, so we see that as more of a monthly allocation and a much more standard allocation throughout the months. As far as our expenditures go, also we are kind of right on track with where we were last year. Last year, we were at 49.85%, and this year we're at 50.29% through the end of January. I did want to highlight something that we have talked about a little bit in the finance department. I think the question has come up from the board about teachers spending their own money on supplies. If you look on our supply line and instruction, we've only spent about 35% of that instructional supply material, and we have $1.1 million. So we're making a point to educate our bookkeepers, our principals, to have the conversations with teachers. There's money there at this time in the year. A lot of times, I don't know if teachers aren't asking for them or if principals aren't communicating that, but we are trying to be very intentional about educating and putting that out and saying, go out and ask your teachers if there's things you need to order, if there's supplies you need. There is money available there in all of the schools' accounts. So I just wanted to make that known to you all that we are doing that and we are trying to be intentional. We have a bookkeepers meeting coming up in April, and we will be communicating that with our bookkeepers to make sure that's something that they're staying on top of so we can address those needs. So I'll stand for any questions.
I don't have any questions, but thank you for that update on how the supply piece works. That's come up a good bit, so it's just kind of good to know where to refer them and kind of tell them what those next steps are when we have those requests.
No, I appreciate that. We don't know what we don't know, so if you
That's
bring
right.
things to our attention, we can always do a better job of communicating and educating on that piece. So thank
I
you.
appreciate that. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you, Ms. Tucker.
Thank you.
And for our final report, for the superintendent's report, we ask our Chief Operational Officer, Dr. Gerald Geary, to come forth with our operations quarterly report.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Dr. Ross, board members. Director of Facilities and Operation, Mr. Alan Knotts, is going to do our quarterly report for operations and construction.
So we're excited tonight to provide some updates to the board regarding the projects. Some are bond referendum related and some are tied back to the IRMO project. So our first project that we're going to take a look at is the new Rich Lex Education Center. As you can see here in the conceptual model, this right here is like a history wall that we're looking to do in the foyer of the school. We have partnered with CPL to move forward with this project. They've done a lot of homework, and you'll see that as we move through this presentation, that dives into the history of the original Rich Lex School. So we're going to be starting the facility review here in the middle of April, and then we have the meeting with the African American Historical Society of IRMO, that's still to be determined. So CPL was able to actually go back and gather a lot of data and history on the overall facility. As you can see here, 1918, when the facility was first opened, and through every year that they made some progress through the facility and updates. And it also looks like in 2018 or 2028, they'll have 110 years of continuous service on that site. Here we have a picture of the original Rosenwald School. This right here, I believe, and I'm trying to get the reference of where it's actually located. I believe it's kind of near the front part of the school. We have another, some other information. Maybe at another point we can have CPL actually come here and do a greater in-depth, detailed presentation on the history of the Rich Lex facility. But I just thought that was really, really neat, and I wanted to bring this tonight. The next project we're going to take a look at is the Dutch Fork Elementary School. Here is an aerial view of the conceptual design of the facility. The overall programming for the space has been completed. Schematic design is in development, and the site surveys are currently underway. When looking at the building itself, the architectural features of the building is nearly complete. We still have mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and then we have the site surveying that's still ongoing. So we're making tremendous headway with this. In this rendering here, you can kind of see where the car rider drop-off is and a courtyard with the school. Here we have just a conceptual drawing of what the classroom could look like with the lights dimmed. And then as you look through the corridors, you see where we are trying to bring a lot of natural light into the facility. Our next projects are the wings at Chapin Elementary and Lake Murray Elementary. Here we have the 3D model and the floor plan layout for Chapin Elementary. And the 3D modeling and rendering and the floor plan for Lake Murray Elementary. And I'm pleased to say that design development has been 100% completed for this project. Irma High School, and this is the thing that we all get to see as we drive down St. Andrews. We're seeing a lot of progress here. ACON's doing a great job. Things are moving forward. Here's an aerial view of the front of the school. As you can see, as we move all the way toward the back, you'll see that back portion, that's the parking lot area. That's just a temporary parking lot, and eventually that's where the student service / cafeteria will reside. And just a side aerial view of the school. So I'm pleased to say that this project here is close to 60% being complete. So everything's tracking well. Here are our change orders since our last update for Irmo High School. And I stand for any further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Nas. Do we have any questions? Ms. Barnhart?
Just because it's up on the screen, can you tell me about change order number 14?
So the aluminum frame color, there was a error in the design and then how the, through the bid documents. LS3P, they are going to pay for a good portion of this.
And no more questions, but I like, with the Dutch Fork, the natural light concept. Our kids don't get, in my opinion, you know, a lot of time, enough time outdoors, so that's gonna be a cool way to kind of bring that natural sunlight into the classroom. And
Yeah.
I look forward to going, it was Thursday, to walk through Irmo and see the update, so thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Satterfield?
I really have a comment more than a question, but it's ironic you showed the slide of the school when it was a two-room schoolhouse. And I imagine it was K through 12, and probably one room was elementary, and the other room was high school. I mean, you talk about diverse instruction with all those kids in there from all those levels. And then you showed that beautiful new picture of Dutch Fork, of the new Dutch Fork Elementary School, and what a long way we've come with regards to schoolhouses and school buildings and expectations of those buildings. But like I say, it was just I thought it was really neat to see the original. I'm glad you put that in there and the difference.
Anybody else? All right, thank you, Mr. Dodds.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Knotts. I certainly appreciate the hard work. We're really excited and looking forward as we move to receive these bond funds. We have already deep in the work. So again, thank you for that report, Mr. Alan Knotts. That is our D5 story. That concludes the superintendent's report, and I stand for any questions.
Do we have any questions for Dr. Ross? All right, thank you.